You know when someone says this might be a little uncomfortable and you're like, I'm tough. I can handle it.
Yeah, I've done sex jokes with your mom sitting in the front row.
No, but like when a doctor is about to insert radioactive dye up your cervix and you're laying spread eagle on a cold table.
Oh, no, I don't know this punchline.
And the radiologist is getting increasingly frustrated because apparently your cervix won't cooperate.
Well, your cervix has always been a bit of a rebel.
And then he says the one phrase you never want to hear during a medical procedure. I tried my best. Hi, I'm Lauren Tassi.
And I'm Alex Hooper. Welcome back to Hopefully Kidding.
And this is a story of how we found out my body might be just as complicated as his.
Wait a second. If this is a competition, I think cancer and sepsis would like to step in and have a word.
Just wait till you see what's coming.
Where we last left off, I had gotten out of the hospital. I was back at home. We had home health aides coming to help me with physical therapy and change my PICC line dressing and things like that. And I got cleared by my infectious disease specialist to finally start chemo again. So finally, my oncologist has an orgasm because he was waiting for this for so long, as was I. And I find out, yes, there is a light at the end of the chemo tunnel.
So we can finally get back to planning our lives. And the first thing we're going to do is go on vacation.
Yeah, we knew we had 2 more months of chemo, and we just assumed. We were like, this is it. I'm done. I know how things are going. I know how I'm feeling. Let's go somewhere awesome. We need a honeymoon. Honestly, I needed like 9 vacations since I found out I had cancer.
I mean, our listeners might even need a vacation after all we've been through since listening to the podcast.
Yeah, 5 episodes in, and you've gone through how many traumatic experiences? But Lauren, where do we go?
So we were trying to decide, do we want like a beach vacation? Do we want to relax? Do we want to go explore in nature? Do we want city vibes? It was really like literally the world was our oyster. We hadn't taken a honeymoon. We had told everyone who gave us money for a honeymoon at our wedding that we were going on one. So it was time to go. And I ultimately left it up to you naturally as the, survivor.
Yeah, this is mine. I get to choose it. And bucket list for both of us, really. But I chose Japan. I've always wanted to go there. I love their culture. I love their cuisine. Everything about it was just so enticing for me. And so that was it. I was like, let's go to Japan.
Yeah, it was also, we decided the timing of it worked out. We'd be going in April, and that's just the perfect time of year to go to Japan.
Yeah, it was cherry blossom season.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's also talk about the other part of our life we get back to planning, and that's getting pregnant and having a baby. At this time, we're using condoms while we're having sex because of the chemo. There could be toxicity in your sperm. You don't want that inside you, Lauren. We use condoms, which was just the most bizarre experience because we've never used condoms very much.
No, we've never used them because we've been together so long. You were on birth control. You had an IUD. There was no reason to not just be sticking it in raw dog style. And so I just remember the first experience of us having to go to CVS and buy condoms. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, are these ones you might enjoy? Do I get them for your pleasure, for mine? Do I go ultra thin, or do I just buy a package of Ziplocs and just put that on me and hope for the best? It was such a bizarre experience to have to use condoms at all. Like, do you remember being in the bedroom and having almost like that? It's the scene that you see in every romantic comedy that's like a little filthy, where the guy's trying to like stay hard while like rip open the package with his teeth and do everything. And that was me. That was me. I was just fumbling around like a bumbling Jack Black trying to figure out, how do I do this? How do I do it? Weird.
Yeah. I'm real glad we're past that phase of our lives.
We can get back to it anytime, though.
Yeah, it's true. You know what? The condoms were in my nightstand drawer, and I moved them into the bathroom, our second bathroom over here, furthest away from our bed, just in case that was affecting our, juju with getting pregnant.
It's like the condoms graduated. They were putting bad energy into our bedroom and baby making.
That is not the vibe,
Nope.
So we were ready to get back to our plan to get pregnant. And as we'd been advised, Alex, his sperm was likely at this point not fertile and may never be fertile. So we're making an appointment at the fertility clinic. Without much thought about it, I just made a consult at the clinic where we froze your sperm. I didn't really shop around. I wasn't really considering it much at this point. I figured, we're just here because because of Alex's sperm, so we'll just do something real quick. Look how fast we got pregnant before. We're going to be the easiest in and out case. This isn't a big deal. We'll just, go quickly.
Yeah, essentially my sperm just needs to get out of the freezer, get ready to go swimming, do some stretches, put on its swim cap, and then dive in the pool of your vagina. And then it swims right up, and there we go. Does a few laps. Next thing you know, we're in baby town.
Yeah, so it took, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks to get the appointment. It was completely reasonable. Some people wait months to get a fertility clinic appointment. But we go in, and tell me, you'd had a little bit of interaction with the doctor up until that point through the sperm freezing. This was my first interaction. What did you think of him?
Well, the only real interaction I had is when he called to tell me that my sperm was unbelievable, which I still think is such a hilarious choice of wording. Because when I think of the word unbelievable, I think of a mother who finds the strength to lift a car up to save an infant. I think that's unbelievable. I do not think of me having 390 million sperm as unbelievable. Preposterous? Yes. Unbelievable? No. But I didn't really have much to go on other than this guy had already complimented my manliness. So sure, let's go back. Plus the clinic had good ratings.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I don't know that I even looked at them. I think it was just that it seemed like the fastest straight line to what we needed, it felt like a bit of a bromance between you two. Like I was in the middle of, we went to this appointment. I felt like he was basically high-fiving you about your sperm count.
It did feel that way a little bit, and I did not discourage it because, first of all, when you go to this fertility clinic, every single person that works there is a woman. He is the only man that I ever see in there. So I grab on to that energy. Not that I'm uncomfortable with being around a bunch of women. I mean, every time I hang out with your family, it's your sisters, your mom, yourself, and I'm usually the only guy. But in this situation, I was like a little uncomfortable. I'm in a fertility clinic. So yeah, me and this guy, we kind of start bonding. I'm able to make jokes. We talk about tennis, like things like that.
That's interesting. I never really thought I wonder if it's like that for a lot of guys going to a fertility clinic because it is, the nurses, the staff are mostly women.
All women at that one.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And so it wasn't that I was uncomfortable, but I was like, finally, a dude. So yeah, there were definitely times when we would have a little moment together. He wouldn't wink at me as other doctors previously had, but yeah, we had some high fives.
And on my end, I was just sort of rolling my eyes at it all. I get that he's probably very happy to have a patient where he doesn't have to tell the man there's something wrong with your sperm, which 50% of the time, that's what it is. And some men will take that very hard. And that's probably a very hard conversation to have.
Some men will also take it very soft.
Yes, of course. And so I think it's probably great for him when he can just be like, this guy's good. And he knows that makes you feel good to do that, right?
Yeah. I came in with a heart on every single time. I was just ready to go. Where do you want me to shoot it?
So beyond that, at the first fertility appointment, we're just reviewing medical history. I did not take my pants off. This was just a conversation in his office. It wasn't even in an examination room. It was in his office, right? Sitting across the desk from him. And then we had some blood work done. Going into this, I had previously taken a home test that measures your different levels of hormones. It's called Modern Fertility. I think they still do it. My sister actually worked for the company for a while. She doesn't work there anymore. And so I had just a baseline idea of what I was looking at when it comes to hormones. And there's basically 3 or 4 hormones that fertility clinics look at, that this test looked at, that can give you some sort of indication as to where you are with your, how easy or not easy it will be to get pregnant, things that can be markers for PCOS or endometriosis or any of those things that might hinder getting pregnant. These handful of hormones can help you see what's coming.
Question, PCOS?
PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. I do not have it. I am not an expert on it by any means, but basically it's when one of these hormones is very high, it can cause certain reactions in the body. When it comes to IVF, PCOS is you end up with a lot of eggs. Like you could have 40 or 50 eggs, but the quality is generally much lower.
So that is not a good thing. You do not want a shower of eggs raining down upon you if you have PCOS.
Well, you likely will have lots of eggs and you will be stimulated. Like the stimulation portion will be a bit more brutal just because you will be like so enlarged because you have all these eggs in your ovaries.
Okay, is this how Octomom happens?
No. We're getting off topic here, but Octomom Octomom happens when a fertility doctor puts 8 embryos inside you, or 6, and 2 of them split into twins. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So anyway, we do not want PCOS.
Right, but a lot of women have it, and there's ways to treat it, and it's not you won't get pregnant. It's just a condition.
Okay, so what else are you learning at this time?
So I take this information that I had done this modern fertility test to our first consult with the fertility clinic. The modern fertility test had told me that I had a slightly low AMH, which is anti-Müllerian hormone.
Oh, it's also Alexander Michael Hooper.
Yes, I have a low dose of you, apparently.
I do not think that's true, and nobody would agree with that. You have a very high dose of me. Too high, I think.
At the time, and I think it was about a year between when I did that modern fertility test and when we went to the fertility clinic for the first time, I'd done the research at the time. I was like, slightly low. Oh, that's not good. All the other hormones were like fine, normal. And so I did a bunch of research and it was like, yeah, I guess it's a little low, but it wasn't like 911 low.
Yeah.
So it was never in my mind that would be a problem. So I shared that information with the doctor. We go through my age, my weight, all of these things. I will say I never had to step on a scale. At no point was I ever judged for being like somewhat overweight, being not a skinny person. You know, it's something that I am always aware of and conscious of when I'm going to the doctor, especially like seeing a new doctor for any sort of trouble. I was not like blamed for being, heavy at all.
Have you had that with other doctors? Like, have you felt that way?
I think maybe when I was younger, I mean, to be fair, outside of fertility stuff, I have not really been to the doctor a lot as an adult. But it's something always on your mind because there's a lot of, especially older doctors don't necessarily understand that there is not necessarily a correlation between like weight and health, especially if you're in a mid-range. If you're 500 pounds, it's definitely going to be doing negative things to your health. But if you're just, a little plus sized or, we have this BMI measure, which has basically been debunked at this point, that it's just not a reliable way to determine health. But, I have a somewhat high BMI, but am I not a healthy person? Absolutely not.
No, you thrive out in the real world through exercise. I've gone through many, many challenging hikes with you. I mean, multi-day music festivals where we're spending God knows how many countless calories and how much energy. I mean, everything you do is like you're always doing yoga. You do kettlebell weight classes and things like that. You're super healthy. So that's why I had to ask if that was actually a concern or not. Anywho.
Yeah, but this doctor did not judge me, never said, oh, that's a little high or you should lose weight. That never came up. So if somebody's listening and they're concerned about that and maybe that's preventing them from consulting with a fertility doctor, that has not been my experience. Make the appointment. Don't be afraid. So we go through my age, all my numbers, history, cancer, not just your not just your cancer, but like family history of cancer and all of that, everything you do when you go see a new doctor. And then he starts to go through the statistics. Do you remember this? I remember this so clearly.
Yeah, for sure. When he goes through, a 22-year-old woman has this chance. Is it the conversation?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you do the details of it though.
I mean, we're not going to get into the details of it, but basically he starts breaking it down, all the numbers. Here's the odds you're going to get pregnant on one cycle at your age just having sex. Here's the odds you're going to get pregnant on one cycle with a non-medicated IUI. Here's the odds with a medicated IUI. Here's the odds with IVF. And it's all a numbers game. Doctors are a numbers game. It's science. It's not art. This is the beginning of me getting obsessed with the numbers. And if you're in this world, as anyone who is a controlling or perfectionist type of person, you're probably obsessed with the numbers.
Yeah, it's all percentages and odds. And okay, well, if we roll the dice this many times, then we're eventually going to land on a 6. And so this is when it's like a sliding scale too, where I believe, I mean, that's probably the first time we heard the term geriatric pregnancy, which is super offensive. At least the first time I heard it. But eventually, because you were already over 35, as was I. So guess what, Grandma? We're going to see if we can still make those ovaries pop, even though you have a bunch of dust inside of you.
Yeah. So we had a conversation between IUI and IVF. He was not pushing us towards IVF at all. It just seemed like way too much ammo to throw at the problem. And definitely the expense was a huge concern, where IUI was, we didn't really need fertility treatment, right? Like this was just, we got to get the sperm up in there and everything will be fine.
Would you mind real quick explaining what an IUI was? Because I actually did not know that term. I had heard IVF plenty of times. I had never heard IUI, but I imagine it's when you have a threesome because it's me, and you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I, you. Okay, perfect. Great.
IUI is artificial insemination. It stands for intrauterine insemination. And the difference between like your typical turkey baster thoughts of what artificial insemination would be is the
Sorry, I was just doing a hand squirt motion.
Oh, I thought you were telling me to hold my microphone.
No.
Okay. So IUI, instead of turkey baster method where you just kind of squirt it up there and hope for the best, is they take like a long tube and they put it not just up your vagina, but through your cervix, which is the little hole that opens up for the baby to come out, which is where the sperm goes, all the way through your cervix to the top of your uterus, which is where your the egg would hopefully be at the time of ovulation.
Okay, so you're basically, instead of meeting in the middle, you're deciding that you're going to take a plane across the country to go meet up with this person because, look, you don't know if you're going to make it or not, but you want you want to do the least amount of work possible.
Yeah. So actually, I've heard a statistic. I can't back this up, but based on the size of a sperm and the distance between the cervix and the uterus is like a sperm having to swim from Los Angeles to San Francisco.
Whoa. Okay. So my uncle could probably do that. He's a very impressive swimmer, done a bunch of Ironmans and things, but the normal person would not be able to make that swim. They'd probably get eaten by a few sharks along the way.
Right. So the IUI they take the tube and they put it through the cervix. It's not painful, and the sperm end up right where they need to be. So it can be especially helpful if your swimmers aren't as strong, if, it's a much better chance than just sex on its own.
Okay.
So let's keep going. We basically decide, let's do one of these quick IUIs and be done. He's like, okay, great. We have to do some testing first. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So we do some blood work that day. We also, I go back a few days or a few weeks later at the right time in my cycle, and they do a follicle count.
Okay, follicle count. Explain again, please.
Right.
This is going to be my goal. Part of my job here is, as the guy in this relationship, I hear all these words, but I rarely know what they mean. So follicle count, go.
Right. So when you hear follicle, think egg, right? Because the follicle is what the egg grows inside of. So we talk about this a lot when it comes to fertility treatments, but we want to grow as many mature eggs as possible. What they can do is they can, through an ultrasound, they will count and measure your follicles. And when you're just getting started, when you're doing this testing, this is when they're really going to be able to check and see like how many are you actually producing every month. And this is a vaginal ultrasound. This you are taking your pants off for. That the first time I did this was my first, well, no, it wasn't my first vaginal ultrasound. That was at the, with OBGYN. When we
I think we have one of those already.
So this was my second. I was still not used to it at this point. It's very strange.
Stop getting your vaginal ultrasounds mixed up, Lauren.
Seriously. So he goes and he can count them. He can literally see how many eggs you have that are getting close to maturing. And then naturally your body once a month will release one egg, whichever one's most mature, the one most likely to be fertilized. That's what happens when you're not messing with things with, fertility treatments. So I go and get my follicle count done, and it's a little disappointing. He counts 8, and someone my age would hopefully have 15.
Oh, okay. So how does that make you feel?
worried, but again, when it comes to IUI or getting pregnant naturally, it's really success is one, right? Success is one great egg that meets the sperm at the right time.
What a beautiful love story you just put out.
Follicle count and AMH measurement really only becomes a bigger factor once you're talking IVF, when you want to get as many eggs as possible in one cycle. And so the follicle count was in alignment with the results of my AMH, which was the one I had been told a year before was slightly low. And that was my AMH was 0.7, which is low for someone my age. It could be worse, but it's not great.
What should it be?
Above 1 would be better. 1.5 would be great. At 37, like you said, having 15 follicles is what you're hoping for, because then in a round of IVF, you could potentially get 15 eggs or more.
Okay.
Versus the 8 number that became my baseline.
And he learned all of this from the vaginal ultrasound.
The follicle count, yes, which again is basically egg count, because the follicles are what the eggs grow in. And then the blood work that was done previously.
Okay, gotcha.
Moving on, one of the other things you do when you start fertility treatments is you have to do HSG, which I'm not even going to try and say what the long version of that is.
Madison Square Garden.
Yes, definitely. Which is a imaging of your uterus. And through this, they can make sure there's nothing weird going on in your uterus, like polyps or scars or fibroids. It can tell if your tubes are open or blocked. So what this procedure is, and we had to go to an imaging center. They didn't do this at our clinic. This takes us back to the beginning of the episode.
Okay.
And I will say this was the most painful and unexpectedly painful part of all of the fertility treatments we've done to date.
Oof, the most painful?
Yeah, it was. They give you Valium and Tylenol to take beforehand because they want you to relax and they want you to, hopefully not feel pain, but they're not like knocking you out for this.
Should throw in a gin martini in the mix too.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed that. And I never have had a ton of anxiety about like getting an IUD put in, getting a pap smear, the vaginal ultrasound. Like it might be a little uncomfortable, but that has never given me a ton of anxiety.
Okay. I'm sure it does for a lot of women. So at least, that's a strong point for you that you're okay with it.
And this was not something I Googled to death or, watched a bunch of YouTube videos on.
Oh, you didn't watch a bunch of YouTube videos on this part?
No, I didn't. I was just like, okay, go get the thing, whatever. So I
watched a bunch of Pornhub videos on it.
Yeah, gross.
Sorry.
It's okay. It turned out to be so painful, and they didn't let you come into the room, which at that time didn't know how to fight for myself, or didn't know how to be like, no, I want my husband here to hold my hand.
They didn't know how strong my cum was.
I guess, what? Okay.
Because you came into the room?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
all right.
okay,
Come on.
It was so painful. And if I had my husband there to hold my hand, or maybe he would have been like, hey, stop, this isn't working, because they put the dye in, and the room was freezing cold. And again, I'm spread eagle on this table, and the technician is like putting the dye in, and he's like, oh no, it keeps coming out. And I'm like, okay, well, like I can't do it. Like, I don't know how to keep it. Like, I can't help you here. You know what I mean?
Use your Kegels, Lauren.
This is your job. And in my opinion, you're not doing your job. I can tell he's frustrated, and I'm like, did we get what we needed? He's like, I don't know. You have to talk to your doctor. And I'm just like, oh my God, what happened? Like, what happened? And it was just so painful. It was just really intense cramping. I just wanted it to be over at that point. So even though I'm very much a like suck it up and take it to get things done type of person, at that point I was just like, I have to get out of here. This is terrible.
Can I ask you something? Like, what do you think was going on? Was he just not doing his job correctly, this technician?
So it is a painful experience, and I didn't know that going into it. A lot of people experience a lot of pain, the cramping, like your body is just like, I don't really want this, please, So it's natural, but like they're shooting this radioactive dye, and they're using, an X-ray or whatever to take an image and be able to see on the inside. And you know what? We'll get to what actually happened once we get to the next meeting with the doctor. In the meantime, let's talk about what's going on with you.
Okay.
Because the chemo's going well, and we're finishing up at this point. I think you just had your last chemo session and you have to go get another PET scan.
Yeah, I remember. I will never forget this date. The date of my last chemo was March 2nd, 2022. And then my PET scan was March 25th. I know that date specifically because the night before I had done the show called The Goddamn Comedy Jam, where I actually sang about my whole experience on stage. It was very cathartic. Next day, I go back to the PET scan, the imaging center, where I had previously had a horrible experience. However, I had zero memory of this whatsoever. And by this point, you were allowing me to go to appointments by myself. You were like, I don't need to accompany you anymore.
Allowing or very much enjoying the fact I did not have to shuttle you around to doctor's appointments.
Probably both. You were like, Alex, please eat something. I'm scared. No, I was good to go on my own. And you're right. I got to this place. I had zero recollection of ever being there in my entire life.
God.
So, and you had asked me before, you were like, hey, see if the technician remembers you. If it's the same guy, he's going to have this island accent. And okay, trigger warning for anyone who is offended by accents. I'm going to do this accent because it does make the story better, because it was the same guy. And Lauren is right. I had zero remembrance of ever being in this place or meeting this guy. But I asked him, I said, hey, do you remember me? I was here 4 or 5 months ago, and he suddenly, his face just like stops and his jaw drops and he goes, oh my God, man, I feel like I'm looking at a ghost. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, you were in here with the woman, right? Your wife, she's very tall. And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh, that day was one of the saddest days in 20 years of doing this job. And I was like, why? He goes, because I'm looking at you and I'm looking at your wife, and all I'm thinking is, this young woman doesn't know she's about to be a widow. Mm-hmm. And I was like, fuck, holy shit. And he's like, I can't even believe I'm looking at you right now. And I was like, dude, I can't believe it either. And he's like, can you come to the back room? And I was like, yeah, on my own. Actually, I am perfectly able to do those things. And I took a picture with this guy because I was like, I gotta show my wife when I get back. She's gonna be thrilled. And I'm glad that it was you that was here again, because even though I don't remember being here, obviously you do. And so the fact that I get to walk in proud and tall and able-bodied, healthy, wow, what an experience.
Yeah.
And I learned, and then I learned, guess what? There's no more cancer inside your body. And I was like, fuck yeah. Not only am I great at getting cancer, I'm also great at beating cancer. So it was 8 months after I had gotten diagnosed, and now here I am, and no more cancer. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that was so great when we got that phone call, or I don't know, was it a doctor's appointment?
I think it was an appointment. I mean, we had to go back to my oncologist, obviously, once they had the results. And God, what a fucking relief, dude. I mean, we're still going through all of our fertility stuff, but at least now we can clear Hodgkin's lymphoma from the deck of cards, because honestly, it was backing us up. It was blocking what we needed to do.
Yeah. All right, so we're ready to get back to fertility stuff, and we go to the doctor's office for a follow-up, and he starts presenting us with the results. We already knew from the follicle count and the AMH that wasn't great news. It wasn't terrible news, but it wasn't great news. At this next appointment is when he gives us the results of the HSG, and basically he's concerned that I have an incompetent cervix.
Wait, please. Once again, incompetent cervix. You got to explain this one.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a medical explanation for you, but it's basically when your cervix doesn't perform the way it should. And it can be especially dangerous during pregnancy, because the cervix is what keeps the baby inside of you, right? That's the hole it comes through. And if your cervix can't remain closed when it's supposed to, you're at risk of early labor, all sorts of all sorts of problems.
Right. You could just be walking down the street and the baby just slips right out onto the sidewalk.
Exactly. So that he was concerned about that, and he wanted to explore that before we kept going.
Incompetent cervix. It's like it needs to go to HR because it's been disrespecting other coworkers.
I remember him being like, "It's not that you're incompetent. It's just that
The
you
reassurance?
might." Yeah. The guy, and this was definitely one of those moments where it felt like he was high fiving you about your sperm.
Right. Because he would always go like, "We know it's not this guy, right?" Hey, all right, up top.
The other thing is the HSG did not give us clear results on whether my tubes were or were not blocked. The dye was not able to pass through in the imaging. So it could be that they were blocked. It could be that, the test just wasn't performed properly, which was concerning, but we had gotten pregnant rather recently. So in my mind, I was like, well, at least one of them's got to be open. Otherwise, how did the egg get from the ovary through the fallopian tube to the uterus?
Right. It doesn't just go knocking on the door and ask to come in.
Yeah. So I kind of put that out of my mind. The doctor would not be moving forward with IUI if he was concerned about my tubes being blocked. That would be a terrible doctor. So he performs in the office, and I was terrified of this because I had been underprepared for the HSG, but he did a saline ultrasound, which is similar to the HSG. It's just they put saline solution up your cervix, and then just through ultrasound, he's able to monitor and see where the saline solution goes. My cervix passed that with flying colors. It is not incompetent.
Way to go, cervix.
And so with that information, we got the green light to do an IUI.
Okay, so now that means we're about to get pregnant, right? Isn't that what that means?
No, we got to go to Japan first, Alex.
Oh, right, of course. Domo arigato for reminding me.
So instead of starting on the next cycle, we're like, okay, we'll start on the cycle after that. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. Please go, go have fun, go enjoy your trip. We'll do it when you get back.
Yeah, and man, did we enjoy this trip. I mean, going to Japan was everything that we'd ever, it was the vacation that we dreamed of when we thought about going there. We ate so much delicious food. We ate so many times per day. I mean, Japan gives you very reasonable portions. So sometimes we would just be like on a list to eat at a restaurant, and they'd be like, oh, it's going to be like an hour and a half. We're like, okay, cool. Let's go have first dinner then at another type of restaurant. Because we just wanted to try everything.
Yes. And it was just like, do you remember like the 7-Eleven food was so good? That's the problem is all of the food is so good.
Yeah.
That you just want to keep eating it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the mini marts there are such an experience. You have to go to them on a daily basis. We would like start our day by going in there and be like, okay, let's go to the Combini and see what we want. And we would just get the weirdest stuff, strawberry whipped cream sandwiches and like these like teriyaki rolls and all kinds of just like, if it was weird, we were like, all right, let's buy it. Let's try it. It was just the greatest. We had a friend that lived in Osaka that's been living there for 7 years. So we first went to Osaka because we figured the first part of our trip, it'd be really great to see this friend of ours who's one of our best friends from college. And since he's been living there, he'll have knowledge about like where to go, where to eat, what restaurants, what we need to see tourist wise and stuff. And it was such a dream having him there because we didn't have to just be on our phones every second while we were walking around. We could let him kind of guide us. His experience there has been pretty unique just because he immediately made a few friends, but they happened to be like these Japanese gangsters just because basically when he went over there, he wanted to find weed, and the only people that sell weed over there, because it is super illegal, are Yakuza members. So he became friends with these people, and one day he goes, hey, would you like to go out to this other city? It's about an hour away. It's called Nara. They have this deer reservation, and I had heard about this from a different friend, and I had been recommended to us. So I'm like, yeah, totally. He's like, great. Well, my gangster friend is going to drive us out there. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's a different kind of experience. Sure enough, we meet this guy. He is tattooed from neck all the way down. And it was, what a day that was, Lauren.
It's bizarre to be in a car on a highway in Japan, period. Like there are people that live in Japan their entire lives and never get in a car.
Yeah, because public transit is so good there.
So that was an incredibly bizarre experience. And then just, we did not have a normal tourist experience at all with our friend from the Yakuza, which is the Japanese word for mafia.
Yeah, I mean, he lit up a joint when we got in the car. And so we're driving down a Japanese highway smoking weed. And our friend just looks at us and goes, "This is not a typical Japanese experience." I was like, yeah, no fucking shit. We're smoking weed in a car with a gangster. We might as well have just murdered somebody. Like, this is insane. And then we're walking through this deer reserve and there are just deer everywhere. You get these little deer cookies and you feed them. They can get very aggressive. We watched that a few times. Otherwise, most of them are pretty sweet. But if they know you have cookies and you're not giving up the cookies, oh man, do they get upset with you.
There are just so many deer and they're aggressive and used to humans. It just kind of feels like the beginning of a horror movie a little bit. Like the deer are about to take over because they're like, you get off the train station or the parking garage in our case, and there's like a couple deer. And then you go deeper into, it's really a little city and there's like one of the coolest temples I've ever seen we saw. But like the deeper you go and the more deer there are and the fewer people, it starts to get really weird.
Yeah, meanwhile, we're hitting a weed vape and just like blowing it all over the place. And which I felt comfortable with because we were with this guy and he was doing it. So I was like, okay, I guess we can be stoned too. And we've mentioned before, Lauren does not do well on weed, but in this situation, I actually think you did fucking great.
Yeah, I think it's because I was completely out of my element, right? I had no responsibilities. I wasn't thinking about work. I wasn't,
You weren't thinking about locked up abroad?
Yeah, I guess. No, thankfully I wasn't. It was also because we were with our friend from college who was kind of the friend who taught me how to smoke weed, like you and him. And he was one, I always remember he always said something like, if you're going to waste time, you might as well waste time on this. And that stuck with me for a really long time. And it was sort of getting back into that routine. And like, that was a big part of our friendship and,
Yeah, and I mean, I've never held chopsticks the same way since this day because the Yakuza member laughed at me and made fun of me for how I held them because I guess I held them too far down on the chopsticks. And he looked at me and goes, and I was like, okay, fine, I get it. I hold them up here. I think about that every single time. We had sushi last night and I caught myself holding them down low and I was like, okay, pick it up, Alex, pick it up. So that was an insane, bizarre experience. Osaka was amazing. Then we took the bullet train up. We had a one night in like a bed and breakfast. They're called a ryokan. And that was just, we had our own private little hot tub and onsen on our balcony looking at the mountains. I mean, it was just, what a wonderful experience. We felt so regal.
Yeah. And then it was on to Tokyo. And that was, again, just amazing food and just nonstop activity. I'm so glad we went to Osaka first. I think that's the right order to do it in. And we also discovered, and I wish there were more of these in Los Angeles, but like karaoke rooms, private karaoke rooms.
Yeah. I mean, we have like private karaoke rooms in LA that you can go rent out. We've done it for friends' birthdays a few times. But in Japan, it's not very common to sing karaoke in a bar for a group of strangers. You rent a private little room for yourselves. And so because we were only two people, that wasn't even weird. They had these tiny little closets essentially that you'd go in. And so we did that multiple times because first of all, Lauren has a beautiful singing voice. I try to get her to sing all the time. And oftentimes you don't really want to, but in this situation, had a few drinks in you. You were ready to just go to town.
Yeah. Well, in the karaoke environment, I'm down for it. And I think that's why I wish it was, there was one around the corner from here, because to me, it's like stress relief. It's just like letting go and, having done musical theater and stuff growing up and taking voice lessons, like that was always a part of me that I love doing that. But anyway, we were there celebrating our honeymoon and we weren't there for our anniversary. Our anniversary was like the day before we left or something. But your sister had, as a present, given us money to go and do like a really nice meal in Tokyo. And so we did like a Wagyu tasting course.
It was a Kobe tasting course, I think. Yeah. Because there's Wagyu, there's Kobe. We ended up doing like a 12-course Kobe menu. And I mean, first of all, Japan food is very reasonably priced for the most part. So we were treating ourselves to a nice meal. We wanted to get wine. We wanted to do this whole tasting menu. And it was a great dinner. I mean, really, really high end, very wonderful.
amazing. And then we're walking back, the night is young. What are we going to do? I'm like, let's do another karaoke room. Like that was literally all I wanted to do. I would have done it even more than we did it.
Yeah, we did that and rotating sushi a bunch of times.
Yes. So we go to a place and this one had, you're like getting the room and they had like an unlimited drinks option.
Yeah, an hour and a half cost 14 American dollars, and that is for unlimited drinks in your own private room. And I was like, done. Let's go to town.
Right, and we'd already, had some wine. We're already doing it anyway. And so we go and we order drinks, and I'm certain I got a glass of wine. That's what I would have gotten at the time. But you are taking advantage of the unlimited drinks. And what do you get?
Yeah, I just said, what's the thing that's going to fuck me up the most? Okay, double whiskeys nonstop. So I didn't know, like we're in the room and you get your first one before you go in the room. You can order in advance. But after that, you have to use this little telephone that's in the room to call for service and order what you want. And I could not convey what I needed in English because whiskey double basically meant nothing to them. So I ended up going online into Google Translate and finding how to say whiskey double. And in my drunken state, I know this is, again, very offensive accent, but I was screaming in the phone. They were like, what would you like? And I'm just like, whiskey double, whiskey double. And I don't know how many times I did that because I don't remember the rest of the night, Lauren, so you're going to have to take over.
Yeah, well, one of us was drinking a reasonable amount of wine. Another one of us was pounding whiskey doubles. And I start to realize, and I think we even extended our time because, again, I was just having the best time and you were doing pretty well. But then I noticed you start to like nodding off. And I'm like, okay, he is real drunk and I'm going to have to get him out of this tiny closet of a karaoke room. Luckily, we were only a couple blocks from our hotel and then back to our hotel. The good news is you were in a very great mood and happy and mostly agreeable. Sometimes, especially in college in the past, you weren't always the most agreeable with leaving the party or, whatever had to happen next. But I was just sort of like, hey, Alex, we're going to do this. And I was able to like get you to put your arm around me and sort of happily stumble you back to our hotel room.
Which is not an uncommon sight in Japan at all because the Japanese, holy shit, do they get fucked up in public. It is not uncommon at all to see a bunch of men wearing high-end business suits just sloshed to the 10th degree. It is great.
So I think we must have stopped at a Combini because I was like, okay, he needs some food too. Or maybe we might have had stuff in our fridge in our room from the Combini anyway. And I remember being like, okay, let's get a little bit of food in him and maybe he'll come back. You did not come back. I think you ate something and then like just passed out in your clothes on the bed. And I'm just like, okay, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm not quite ready to go to bed yet. I'm a little drunk, but not blackout drunk. So I go shopping.
Which is hilarious to think that you are in a major metropolitan area close to midnight and you're like, yeah, what do I want to do right now? Buy stuff.
It's such a me thing that I was just like, I'm a little drunk. I got cash to burn. And there was a Don Quixote, which are like these giant department stores. It's like, it'd be the equivalent of like going to Target when you're a little drunk at midnight.
Yeah, but it's more fun than that.
Yeah.
Just because it's like a giant, almost like a Toys R Us, but they have everything. There's this theme song that plays. They're very colorful. It was like 6 stories. These things are a blast.
Japan is so safe too. That's the other thing about it not being the most, it's hilarious, but it's not like, oh wow, that's not safe. Like it was a couple blocks from our hotel. I knew Alex was passed out. He wasn't going to wake up and go, where's Lauren? And so I was just like, this is fun. I bought a bunch of random stuff. And then like later on, they had these, penis bottle openers, like literally just like carved out of a wood block penis bottle openers. And I was there and I was just like, oh my God, this is so funny. I bought one, but I had like 4 in my cart. And I was like, okay, just buy one. We can always come back and get more. So I had like kind of done some pre-shopping and then we got back and I was like, Alex, we need like a bunch of these for our friends. And you're like, yes, we absolutely need a bunch of these for our friends. You said,
how many should we buy? Like 10? And I was like, 3, babe. Like, I know we have a duffel bag to take back with us with gifts, but we're not buying 10 of these wooden dildo bottle openers. Like, honestly, I was just like some like TSA opens that bag and just finds that like, okay, these people are into some weird shit. So yeah, we ended up buying 3, but they did make really good gifts.
Oh yeah. So that was our Japan adventure. Is there anything else?
No, I mean, I could talk about it all day, but that's not really what we're here to do. But it's nice to take a little break and have some fun stories in between all this HSG and follicle incompetent cervix talk.
Yeah. So we get back home. The way my cycle timed up, it wasn't time to start the IUI quite yet. And we actually had some really fun stuff on the calendar over the next couple of weeks. We went to a music festival. We went to our friend's 40th birthday out in Joshua Tree for a weekend.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah, that was so fun just to see everyone. It was partly a celebration of your cancer, like you surviving cancer too. Like you were finally back to being yourself. It felt like
it was our celebration. Like I didn't try to step in on our friend's 40th birthday.
Right.
But we've been out to Joshua Tree with this group of people many times in the past. We rent a few houses, and then we have one main house that we kind of designate as the party house. We bring DJ equipment out there and fun lights and things, and we really turned it into our own little party experience. And these are people that we're closest to. It's just a blast to be out in the desert like that.
Yeah. And then we have one final weekend before we start the IUI. I even at this point had the medication, the pills, like at home. It was like, okay, you start them tomorrow. And this was this like little festival outside the Rose Bowl. And I was like, this is my chance. This is our last moment before we have responsibilities, and I'm about to get pregnant. Like,
yeah, and this was a really random lineup too. It was Idols and Jamie XX and LCD Sound System, who is one of our absolute favorites of all time. We've seen them, I don't know how many times at this point, but we love them. Our friends love them. They're a huge part of our lives, and seeing them in this environment, this really was a celebration because one, we were looking at it as our last weekend without responsibility. I had gotten over cancer and everything else, had this terrible year. And there's actually a line in the LCD Sound System song Home where he says, "This is a trick, forget a terrible year." And I just remember like that hitting me so hard deep in my core of like, fuck yes, all of that is behind us. Now we're going to be parents.
So there we are outside the Rose Bowl, listening to LCD Sound System, like with 50 of our friends. We were rolling real deep for that. And it's, this is it.
Yeah. I feel the sense of freedom, of just like, just true inspiration in that moment.
I kept like pulling our friends aside, like one conversation at a time, just sort of being like, this is it. I'm about to get pregnant. Last hurrah. Next time you see me.
But, this whole podcast, as soon as we think something's going to go one way, life kind of throws us a curveball.
But I was certain. I knew what was coming next, Alex.
Well, I guess we'll get into what came next on our next episode. Tune in next time, everyone, to Hopefully Kidding.